artificial general intelligence.
With generative AI, we are taking the next step.
AI has now come back to revolutionize computer graphics.
We are launching our new flagship model, GPT-4o.
Copilot is your everyday AI companion.
Gemini 2.0.
New era of AI. Microsoft
GPT-4.
GPT-4 training finished last August.
GPT-4.
GPT-4.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to talk about AI coding, or what the industry is calling vibe coding. In this video, I'll show you how you can use AI coding to build some really amazing projects. If you're new to this channel, my name is Johnny, and I'm a staff software engineer at Meta. I've been exploring a ton of AI coding tools lately, and I'm on a mission to learn as much as I can, and I'll share that knowledge with you. In this video, I'm not only going to show you how to use AI to make cool apps, but I'm also going to give you my 10 pro tips on how to get the most out of using AI coding. Now, before we get into the tips, let me tell you about this crazy week I just had coding up a bunch of AI projects. I built a ton of projects just using vibe coding. I started actually really simple with a simple cookie clicker game and a Pomodoro app. Both of these apps actually only took me a few minutes to generate. It was basically one generation and I had a Pomodoro app right there. It was pretty amazing. So I decided to push the envelope in complexity afterwards by building like a fun map poster project. In this project, you can add text and icons to any location and download like a printable map for a poster. This was actually a side project business idea I had for a long time. It was actually really cool to kind of build it out and play around with it. I even made $5, someone donated. Now, so far, all of these apps were web-based. They were web apps. But in 2025, we're still dominated by mobile apps. So I wanted to make an iOS app. I wanted to see if AI can handle that. So I got to work and I started prompting, and I eventually made an iOS app that generates images of myself. I also made some other like helpful utility tools within that app for my social media content stuff. But overall, I was very happy with how much I could get done just by prompting. Now, all of these projects I built with Cursor, and it was all 100% AI coded. I didn't really even touch any of the code myself. Overall, I was really blown away by how much I can create just by iterating really fast with AI. You know, I can make all of these apps on my own, but the point is that I was able to do all of these apps in a week. Obviously, none of these apps, in my opinion, are production grade, but for prototyping and getting your apps started, I don't think there's anything better than AI coding. And for me, there's some scrappy use cases like my social media content stuff that I was able to build out really quickly just for my own use. And I'm using it technically in production. So building all of these projects, I learned a ton about AI coding, what works, what doesn't work, and what can help you along your journey. So without further ado, without that long intro, let's dive into the pro tips that I wish I knew earlier when I was getting started. I guarantee it will save you a ton of time from frustrations by following. Tip number 1, embracing YOLO mode. But please be careful. YOLO mode is a setting on Cursor that lets you skip confirmations or accept a bunch of middle steps during the generations. It will also kind of like look at error messages and it will fix itself. So toggling this on will help you move extremely quickly, like way faster than you can potentially do on your own. And the pro tip here, though, when you're using YOLO mode is to properly set up an allow list and a block list. I will link my personal setup below, and I'm still improving this on the daily. But there is a bit of a warning here that if you don't set up YOLO mode, it can be really dangerous. So please use it at your own risk and make sure you set up a block list. If you don't, you might actually end up messing up your system OS pretty badly. So I highly recommend you actually using it and giving it a try after you set that up, and it will really improve that productivity. Tip number 2 is using custom rules and also MCP servers. Now, these are two separate things, but in a way, they kind of do the same thing. They're in a way to give Cursor more functionality and more like fine-grained context when you're trying to execute commands. Custom rules are basically like a notepad where you can inject specific rules. For example, let's say that you're working with SQL files. Then you could create a custom rule where you look for that extension, and every time it runs it, you can inject your database schema, for example. And that will give Cursor a lot more context about your database so that it can generate the code more efficiently. Now, MCP is actually something even more powerful than custom rules, but technically you could do everything that you're doing with the custom rule with an MCP. But an MCP is unique in the sense that you could do a lot more things. For example, you could connect to third-party interfaces like Google Drives or Firebase or other things, and you could essentially bring that kind of context from third parties and also control third parties all through MCP servers. I think MCPs itself requires a video on its own, so I will make that in the future. Some really good example MCPs that I was using was the browser MCP, which essentially looks at console log errors that are happening on your web, and then using YOLO mode, it will self-correct itself. So if you didn't have this MCP, you would have to like copy that error message or take a screenshot and then bring it back to Cursor. So this saves you a lot of steps. But you could imagine what else you can do with MCPs. So if you're serious about AI coding, I highly recommend you to learn about MCPs, and also custom rules are pretty essential for small things. Tip number 3 is writing a detailed product spec. When you're diving into more complicated projects and you want to essentially better guide the AI to actually build what you want, you kind of actually need to build a detailed product spec. It's like actually working on a real software project. If you give AI vague instructions, you'll get vague results and random results. So instead of doing that, try breaking the project into smaller steps. Add detailed user flows or features for the individual sections. And you can even add like images of your designs to the app that you want to build. These additional context in the product spec essentially ensures a way for the AI to be a lot more accurate during its generation. It prevents it from going off track. And you can actually leverage AI to help you write that product spec as well. So just simply in the composer, ask it to write a product spec, and you could just describe it in natural language. So give that a try. Tip number 4 is asking for step-by-step changes and testing incrementally. I kind of mentioned this in the previous step, but don't just tell AI to build an entire app. You can definitely do that for simple apps like Pomodoro apps, but if you want to do anything complicated, it's a recipe for disaster. So instead, make small requests. For example, a good request might be, move this button to the right and change its color. And a bad request might be, move this button, add an on-click event that sends a request to fetch some data, change its color, and animate it. That's just like way too much all at once. By keeping changes small and incremental, you will get way better results and avoid breaking your projects. Tip number 5 is to try and use proper programming terminology. AI loves proper programming terminology when you're coding. For example, if you say, make this div centered or implement a type ahead, then the AI immediately understands. If you're new to coding, learning some basic terminologies, it will massively improve your AI coding results. A pro tip here is to use a chat feature to ask about the best way to prompt for specific terms that will work better. So even if you're not an engineer, you can definitely learn how to prompt better over time. Tip number 6 is actually to use multimodal inputs, like taking screenshots for better feedback. For UI and design related issues, taking a screenshot and describing the problem is actually a really good way to give the AI more context. Instead of saying, make it look better, or this is ugly, make it prettier, show AI exactly what you mean. Take a screenshot of the bug that you're looking for, or take a screenshot of what you're trying to get and say, can you make my design more like this? A picture is indeed worth 1,000 words for AI, so definitely use it. Tip number 7 is to limit the scope that the AI is looking. By default, it will look at kind of your entire project, but you really want to limit the scope by like dragging and dropping or using the @ command to focus on the single files or the few files that you really want to limit the scope to. So by doing this, you will really limit what the AI can focus to, and it will make those changes very sharp. And this will essentially prevent the AI from making changes that you don't actually want. This happens all the time actually, where you ask for one thing, some refactor here, and then it does do that, but then it totally removes another feature. That happens all the time. So a good way to prevent that is by using limited scoping. As your project gets more and more complicated and it grows, you're going to want to learn how to use this very effectively. Another pro tip here is as your project grows, you want to update that product spec that I was talking about and name certain parts of your features so that the AI can kind of like reference and index that feature with your name. For example, billboard or bottom tab, image generator, or things like that. Tip number 8 is using Git. AI coding moves extremely fast, especially with YOLO mode. You want to have a really good system of generating the code, testing the feature, and then making sure it isn't breaking. If you don't use Git, you'll probably break things really quickly and you're going to regret not using Git. So make commits on known good builds. Never trust AI blindly. Roll back when you really need to. This will save you a ton of time from headaches because a lot of times AI coding can go off rails. And especially if you are not specific with your instructions, it will do a ton of things that you don't want it to actually do. So what I like to do when the feature gets a little bit mature and I kind of know, hey, these are the feature sets that I want, I'll ask the AI to write some unit tests around it, and I'll make sure those tests are passing and not changing between invocations. And I also manually test it as much as I can after every large generation. And before I make the next prompt, I'll essentially use Git to make a checkpoint. Now, tip number 9, I kind of talked about it a little bit, but it's basically to use tests to maintain your app. As the AI generated app gets bigger and bigger, you will not be able to manually check everything. So you really need to do what normal engineers do, which is write tests, unit tests, end-to-end tests, and make sure that the AI doesn't keep breaking your stuff. Also, another really big tip here is that if you want a very small fix, hey, I want to change the number of this, I want to change the text of this, I wouldn't really go in and ask the AI to do it. I will actually use a chat system to ask where that code is, and then it will tell you where it is, and you can go and just kind of manually change it. So just kind of be strategic about it. Now, my final tip is about Cloud 3.5 versus 3.7. You don't actually need 3.7 all the time. You only really want to use it when it's necessary because it's expensive, the usage is limited. I mainly switch over to Cloud 3.7 when I want the AI to take a moment to think through a big change. And for everything else, I'm pretty happy with just being on Cloud 3.5. So when you're using Cloud 3.7, you can specifically ask it to pause and think through some of your approaches before it executes. Having the AI think through really, really helps. Now, if you're kind of lazy, you could just keep it on auto and then the AI will decide. That's probably best for most people, but if you want to get the most out of AI coding, then you want to be kind of strategic about which model you're using as well. Because depending on what you use, you'll get different results. There's actually one large section of AI coding that I didn't really cover, which I'm saving for another video, but that's around prompting. I think AI prompting, just like AI writing, is like an art form of itself. And obviously, if you leverage things like custom rules or MCP servers, then you're kind of getting a lot of these prompting for free. But I'm going to dedicate some time and really figure out all of the prompting, and I'm going to make another video for you guys. So subscribe for that video so that you don't miss out. But yeah, these are my 10 tips on AI coding. I hope you learned something new today. I personally think that AI coding is extremely fun, but I want to give a bit of a warning before I end this video. As your project grows, you might feel like that you don't fully understand the AI generated code. And there will be moments when the AI generation just kind of gets stuck. At some point, the AI will just run into a dead end and it will just go into iteration cycles and life cycles, and it just won't be able to figure out that bug. And honestly, this is just kind of the nature of AI coding. It currently simply can't do everything. And I'm sure there's limitations on things that are not as popular for coding in general. You know, web and mobile apps are pretty popular, so that's why AI is really good at it. But I'm sure like game dev and these other things, there's probably some limitations there. But I genuinely think that we're entering in this kind of like wild phase where people with zero coding experiences will be able to just vibe code their way into launching real successful product. But I'm not quite sure what that means for the future of engineering. Will that be like a problem? Are we all going to run out of engineers who actually understands how to code? I guess it really depends on if vibe coding gets so good that this doesn't matter at all. I don't really know the answer, but I'm really determined to find out. So I'll be continuing my journey to learn even more about AI coding and vibe coding with the goal to ship some production grade software by the end of the year using AI coding. So let's see how far I can push it. I highly encourage you to try it out for yourself. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.